discussing a book that really hits home for leaders in every industry, Beyond the Hammer by Brian Gottlieb. Joining me today is my co-host Tina Turner and
Hello,
our book
hello.
and our book leader Nancy Galloway.
Hi,
Thank
Brandy.
you, thank you, Nancy, for being with us today. Um, and on a Monday morning, I should add to that. So nothing
um,
like going out of the gate.
yeah, really. No, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, did you have a good weekend?
I did. I did. It was a good weekend. We got to go to a dance recital for our
Okay.
oldest granddaughter, and so that was exciting.
Oh, how fun. Was that
So it was
her first?
her very first dance recital. Yep.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's awesome. Ronnie, I know you had a exciting weekend.
I did. Mine was a little on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to children. Mine's grown. No, he graduated from high school on Thursday, so we
Oh,
were all there, the whole family. It was a momentous occasion.
that's
We
awesome.
had a great time. We had a great time.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
That's
Well, what about
awesome.
you, Tina? I know you had an adventure.
I did. My Sables group from Alabama. We went fly fishing. That's the first time that I've ever experienced fly fishing, and it was a blast. We did catch some fish, however, they were small, so we didn't. I took the cooler and it came back empty, but that's okay. It was all about the experience, and it was so much fun. We're trying to plan our next trip already, so
Cool.
Oh, it is
yeah,
fun.
for those that do not know Nancy Galloway, she works with us at Integral Hospitality. So, Nancy, thank you for saying yes when I reached out to see if you would host one of our podcasts on our chapters and check ins. So, awesome.
Well, glad to do it. Glad to do it. So I do appreciate you having me, and I'm really excited about this book. It really speaks not only to leadership but to culture and how businesses can move forward in transition from chaos to purpose driven
Hmm.
success. What I really appreciated about the book was the fact that it doesn't feel overly corporate or complicated. It just tells the story through situations and solutions that leaders have experienced all of these situations, and it just gives them a very usable way to be able to attack those things, and how to keep their business moving forward on a daily basis while still trying to solve those everyday problems and crises that we have.
Yeah, and I think most, you know, leaders will say, "Yep, I have, been through that before for sure." The book, I've got it right here, Nancy, and I took it even with me on our fishing trip this weekend, but. I really wasn't sure what this book was going to be about because it had a hammer on the cover, and I'm like,
Right.
is this even a leadership book? It has Wolfgang Puck, which is restaurants and cooking, and I'm like, okay, I know Nancy picked this book out now, so
That's right. That's right. Well, it's funny that you say that. When I chose the book, I didn't know exactly what the premise was going to be either. And when I saw the title, I just kind of had in my mind it's going to be a book about there are other ways to lead other than beating people over the top of the head with a hammer, and trying to make them conform to your ways. So anyway, as we will tell the story, you'll see where the meaning of the title comes from.
Yeah.
that's
Sometimes,
awesome.
sometimes I feel like I'm hitting my own self on the head with a hammer, man.
Yeah, exactly.
When we talk about all the crazy stuff that happens as a manager with employee turnover, departments not working together, inconsistent results, constantly putting out fires. I mean, you
No
know
communication.
yeah, no communication. And when I read this book, it was like this guy knows what he's talking about for sure.
Yeah,
Did he write it
exactly.
about me?
Yeah,
He used me as the example.
Yeah,
you may be in the acknowledgement somewhere.
yeah, probably.
Oh, let's hope not.
So Nancy, what
Oh.
was What stood out at you? What stood out with you immediately when reading this book?
Well, the introduction hooked me right away because the author talks about leaders being stuck in crisis mode instead of actually being able to lead.
Right.
And so that idea that, to tolerate inconsistency and chaos is to normalize it, really stood out to me. You know, that's a powerful statement
It
because
really is.
culture doesn't, slowly drift up on its own. It's if leaders allow negativity or inconsistency or low standards to continue, um, that eventually becomes the accepted culture of the organization and what is deemed to be normal.
Yeah.
So the book also points out that managers often carry a lot of that weight of these issues on themselves, and they become overwhelmed, putting out daily fires instead of focusing on leadership or development or growth. And I think a lot of people, like you said, listening, will connect with that exact feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the famous line that, you go back to our very first podcast, I think, Ronnie, when we were talking about,
Mhm.
what we ask every
Yeah.
person hosting a book, but
Yeah.
it's
Get ready,
inspect what you expect,
Yeah.
And so I think that is such a driving force on that statement, Nancy. So I totally agree.
Yeah, that's true, man. It culture doesn't happen by accident. If leaders ignore those poor habits long enough, they eventually become the standard.
Right.
Sure.
Everyone looks towards that leader. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
They do. They
Yep.
do,
You're
for
exactly
sure.
right. Yeah. This book uses a business parable to show what happens when a company lacks leadership or development and an intentional culture. Success can't be left to chance, like you said. One
Yeah.
thing I loved was that the author doesn't just point out problems; he walks you through solutions in a practical and understandable way through Marty's mentorship of George.
yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about George, the main character, Nancy, and kind of introduce everybody to him that may not have read the book.
Yeah, sure. So George grew up in a family construction business. It was started by his grandfather, who taught him all about craftsmanship and a lot of what he knew. But his father, later took on the business and expanded the company into higher end work, higher end jobs, oftentimes more demanding clients. But after his father very unexpectedly passed away, George suddenly found himself leading the company, and before he felt like he was ready to do so. And I think the story does a really good job showing the leadership transitions are not, only on a non-personal level. They can be very emotional. George didn't
Right.
just lose a business owner. He lost his father, so he was dealing with that, at the same time.
Hmm.
And his father had been the person who had carried the responsibility of the company for all those years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of us kind of fall into that as well. We are handed a leadership position before we feel we're even prepared,
Mhm.
and then we start, going through everything in our minds. And so I think that's, very powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah, with the lack of folks out there to promote, sometimes we promote somebody who's just dependable. Somebody who
Right,
comes to work every single
yeah,
day or does
right.
a good job. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are ready to lead or
Sure.
and haven't been taught to lead.
right.
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
George didn't. That was what it was with George. He didn't think he was a naturally born leader.
Hmm.
He felt he lacked his father's intelligence and charisma that had gotten them through so many years of their business, and he didn't think he had those traits to be a successful leader. So after the transition, the business quickly began to decline. The employee morale suffered. Problems just multiplied across the board. And he started doubting himself even more. I appreciate how honest the book was about that insecurity that he felt, because many leaders quietly struggle with imposter syndrome. They may look confident on the outside, but internally they're wondering if they're capable of the task in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think sometimes in talking to some of our managers that's been in that role, they can go back and say, hey, when I first got into this,
Right.
you know, those struggles.
Yeah.
Ronnie?
But then enters good old Marty. Marty Gold.
I like Marty. I like Marty.
I know, Marty Gold. And
Yeah.
when I read the book at first, I kind of took note of the name of his company, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, how appropriate it was it.
Yeah.
So Marty owned a company called True North Improvements. And so, you hear people talk about, well, that's my true north. And so I thought, well, I'm going to investigate exactly what everybody means by that. And so, true north is actually the direction pointing directly to the geographic North Pole, where Earth's axis of rotation intersects the surface. So it's a fixed, constant point that that can be pointed to. There's never any deviation from it. And how appropriate that Marty's company name was called True North, because he was a constant that George could look at and point himself to and try to align with. I love the way that they ended up meeting. George was dealing with a major, and I mean major, construction disaster for a client who was a very demanding client. And Marty happened to be present when it all came about. And so he witnessed it firsthand. And he saw what George was going through. And so after things died down, the client left. Marty says to George, maybe I can help you.
Right.
But George was very skeptical, because he's thinking, why does a successful person want to spend time with me trying to help me? And Marty was very quick to explain that sometimes, people simply want to extend a hand to other people and pay it forward. Maybe somebody had done the same for him in his past and in his growth as a leader. And so, that mentorship relationship becomes the foundation of the entire story. And the story unfolds around what Marty calls 5 pillars of leadership. So that's kind of what the whole story walks you through.
That is so awesome. You know what, Nancy, it just takes one mentor in your life that can change your perspective and your way of thinking and give you positivity. And I think that is awesome, because it can change everything for you.
Oh, sure.
Having that
Sure.
mentor.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
And it's exciting to think that we have the potential to be a mentor. That's, that we can mentor others. That's just a great way.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point, Ronnie.
yeah. Well, Nancy, let's dive into the first pillar of the 5.
Okay. So pillar number 1, according to Marty, was belief is transferable. So Marty teaches George that what leaders believe about their people eventually becomes what the people believe about themselves. Mm-hmm. So, I thought the contrast between, positive and negative influence is very, very impactful. So George tells the story that his father coined a negative nickname for him when he was just a 10-year-old boy, and he would call him Dozer. Now, when I first started reading the story and I saw that, I thought, oh, well, it must be short for bulldozer. They're in construction.
Right.
Yeah.
But come to find out, it unfolds that George's grandfather, who he so dearly loved, woke him up before sunrise one morning, took him fishing. And he had to go from that quick fishing trip where he actually caught a 5-pound bass. So you think about a 10-year-old boy catching a huge fish like that. What a big day it was.
Right.
And so he leaves his grandfather. He goes straight to school. He finishes his day at school and immediately goes and reports to a job site that his father is running. Well, at the end of the day, rightfully so, George was tired. He's a little guy.
Yeah.
And his dad walked through the job site and caught him nodding off as wherever he was
Sleeping on the
sitting.
job.
Sleeping on the job. And so his dad comes by, kind of kicks his foot, and says to him, not all of us can spend our morning fishing, and not all of us can afford to doze. And so it stuck. And so throughout his whole life, his dad called him Dozer. Every time he used it, it cut a little deeper. It just made him feel really badly about himself. But then the book compares that to teaching a child how to ride a bicycle. Somewhere along the way, somebody that the child trusts has told them, yeah, you can do this. And they believe in themselves, and they allow themselves to believe that, yes, I can ride a bike. And that's how they learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so powerful, Nancy. Just to words, I guess. And, I can't imagine a 10-year-old being, having a name by his father and that kind of going with him through his life. I mean,
right. Exactly.
So,
exactly. So, like I said, it is very powerful. Employees, they rise or they fall on the environment and the messaging that they receive, that they are around. Encouragement, trust, and belief can completely change someone's confidence and their performance.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it really shows the the influence that we have as leaders. I mean, one word, maybe said incorrectly or not meant a certain way, one word could destroy an employee. So we have
Sure.
to be really careful, what we say and what comes out of our mouth. I mean, the words we use matter. They matter.
Right.
Well, and I think, your team also hears you when you're not even in the room,
Mhm.
And
sure.
so I think, we have to stop and think about that because
Yeah.
I think, I know the three of us on,
Yep.
here today, we've had conversations, what would this person be saying right now, And so,
We know who you're talking about.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, it carries, it's true, So, yeah. Well, pillar 2, I love it.
Pillar
Keep going.
2.
Yeah. Yep. So pillar 2, purpose and direction. So, Marty teaches that leaders shape culture through purpose and direction, through mission and vision statements. And what I liked was that the book explains mission and vision in very simple language. The mission explains why the organization even exists, but the vision itself explains what success looks like in the future.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think that, it's not what the word is on the wall either. It's not a statement per se. You have to take it into the mission, the vision, and y'all know, well, Ronnie does, I think.
I do.
All of our managers that are listening on the call, they're going to be hearing more about that. So,
That's coming soon to
yeah.
a near you.
Yeah.
Good
So,
deal. Well, yep. And the book emphasizes, that people need a purpose, but employees want to feel connected to something that's meaningful. You got to have something to believe in.
that's
So,
right. They do.
Purpose creates that emotional investment for each
Yeah.
employee.
Right.
But purpose alone isn't enough. Teams need direction too. You can give them purpose all day long, but if you don't point them in the direction that they need to be going, then they're lost.
That's
so they
right.
need to understand where the organization is headed. That's where that vision comes in, and they want to be told what is our success going to look like.
Right.
Yeah, and it can be something simple but not so simple. Like in the book, I love the phrase in the book. His mission statement was "Do well and do good."
Hmm.
It's easy to remember. It can be
Right.
used. I know in the book it integrated into the culture. What have you done well? What have you done good today? Kind of questions they asked each other.
Right.
So, it doesn't have to be so elaborate. It can just be a simple statement: "Do well, do good."
Right. Yeah, and that line really stood out to me too because it balances both business success with positive impact. To do well, you think about you're being successful. To do
Mhm.
good, you think about that you're doing something meaningful or giving back in some way. And
Right.
when I read it, Chick-fil-A immediately popped into my mind
I
because
love
you know
Chick-fil-A.
they're a very successful organization. um, and but not only are they successful, which I think probably goes a lot to the nature of this book is through their leadership and the way that they train and empower employees, but they do good by giving back, not only to communities but also to their team members through scholarships and so forth. So they do well and they are successful. They do good because of what they do for others. I loved another thing about the was the idea of alignment and obedience are not the same thing. Employees perform better if they understand and believe in the direction that the mission is taking them rather than just following some kind of instructions that have been given to them.
Yeah, and like Tina had said, we're, mission statements and directions and things like that are something that we're going to be delving into. Nancy, can you read the mission statement from the book?
Absolutely. Now, just to remind you, this is a construction based company setting. So their mission statement ended up being while we exist to transform homes, our purpose is to make an impact beyond the hammer by transforming the lives of our customers, our teammates, and the communities that we serve. There's your beyond the hammer, reference from the title. But what makes this that moment so powerful is that George had created a stock mission statement, and he was so proud of it. And he called all of his team together, flipped open his laptop, and he's about to spout out this new mission statement that he's come up with on his own, but really has no depth to it whatsoever.
Right.
And he realizes, you know, this team is not going to get anything from this. What
Hmm.
they need to do is they need to be a part of bringing this to life, and so they did. So the team itself created the mission statement, and of course, it meant so much more to them because they had input into it, and it's what they felt that it needed to be.
Yeah, and it became bigger than just construction. I mean, at that point, it became a legacy thinking. That's
Sure.
that, that's how you build a legacy right there. And honestly, I mean, it applies to hospitality too. We're just not selling hotel rooms. We're impacting people's
Oh
lives,
yeah.
and there's always different levels and different layers to everything. And
Sure.
we're here. We're sometimes we're there for the worst, and sometimes we're there for the best for people, and we have to remember that
Yeah.
in the hospitality industry.
Yeah. So it's beyond the check-in at the front desk. It's beyond
Yeah.
the cleanliness of the room. It's all about the culture and how that guest feels uh, when they are at that property.
Yeah, you know. Let's talk about the third pillow. The pillar. I keep calling it a pillow. I guess it's because I'm thinking about hotel and beds, right?
There you go.
Uh, let's talk about the third pillar. This one might, make some leaders uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and because it's true.
Yeah.
The third pillar is the echo of your voice. The idea is that a leader's emotions echo throughout the entire organization. The leader, whether they're stressed or angry or frustrated or negative, the team absorbs that energy. And I think this section is important because many leaders underestimate how closely people watch them. Teams mirror the emotion of and the tone that is set by the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, our employees watch us very closely, very closely. I mean, we are the example for them, you know. So
Yeah, you're right. Employees, notice reactions that their leaders have, their attitudes, they even body language, um, and so a leader's presence can either create confidence or it can bring tension throughout the whole organization.
yeah, Tina, are you
Yeah,
back?
yeah, I think I'm back. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Technical difficulties. You just gotta love these live podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, real life happening here, folks.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned, was it the last podcast, Robbie, that I was talking about you can walk into a facility and know if there's culture there.
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
That is so true with hospitality or any type of business. You can just walk in and immediately know. So, very,
You're exactly right. Leaders set the emotional temperature, for the whole organization, whether
Right.
they realize it or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. Well, let's talk about the fourth pillar, training and organization.
That's your favorite, I
Yeah.
think.
Probably this is my favorite one right here.
Yeah,
So,
mine too. So, it talks about being a training organization. So, Marty teaches George that a leader's true business is to develop people. One of the strongest points in this section is that leaders can't simply complain about the performance of a team member and refuse to train or coach them on it. It's if somebody's doing something wrong, then or something incorrectly, let's put it that way. It might not even be something wrong. They just may not know how to do it the right
Yeah.
way.
yeah, which
Um,
is
Leadership has the responsibility to teach and to develop that person so that they are able to do it the right way.
Yeah, and I think, that goes back into how you lead, and you want to develop them instead of trying to control them.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference. And so I think spending time developing is a true way to do that.
Yeah, that's a big takeaway. Businesses that grow, they invest in the training and development of their team. Their leaders don't hoard knowledge. They share their knowledge with everybody so that everyone can know the same things that they do. And the book also talks about building a strong bench. You shouldn't just build those top performers. You need to build everyone all the way down the employment line because organizations are constantly preparing for future leaders that can step into a role and giving people opportunities to grow.
Yeah. I think, right now in this employee crisis, I feel like that we're still in of, trying to find employees, it's huge. And I think retaining talent and growing your people is so critical today, more so than ever. So.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some interesting observations by Marty and some teachings about retention. Not only teaching the people that you have, but retaining the people that are team players for you and performance standouts. So that's interesting too. He touches on that. So, but he also says that companies can either fight for that tiny pool of labor, or they can become a training organization. So it's important for the mind shift to be that instead of constantly looking for perfect people, you're actually developing people and through the systems that you've created to help your organization improve and succeed.
Right. Well, I think that just shows trust in the leadership as well. But I think, you hit the nail on the head when you said, spending time on training, because in the systems that you have in place, and sometimes I think we lose train of thoughts on that, because you're ready to hire someone, just get them to work because, we've got a need per se, and we're not training them, and that employee's going to get discouraged
Yeah.
very quickly
Sure.
and leave. And we're wondering, why there's a reason why they left, and they did not feel probably that the training or the investment that they received on their onboarding
Right.
was beneficial, and they didn't feel valued right out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved George's aha moment. We all have aha moments, throughout our lives. And George had one involving his daughter, who is a very interesting character herself,
Yeah.
and as well as an employee of the company. She created a big, and I do mean gigantic, case of heartburn for George and the company. And instead of stepping in and emotionally, he empowered his daughter's manager to lead the situation properly. That moment showed maturity in George as a leader, and it stopped him from rescuing situations personally, but empowering and trusting the leadership that he had around him to handle the situation. Made a big difference for George. It made a big difference for his daughter, and it also made a big difference for the manager who he empowered and who should have had that responsibility for sure.
That's tough
Yeah,
to do.
no, that's huge. I think, like you said, it affected all three of them, but I think it sends a message for manager that, hey, I'm your supervisor, and I'm the one that is directing this conversation. It also speaks to her to say, hey, this is who's in charge of me. This is who my direct supervisor is. And then with George, it shows that, that people have his back and has his vision, and that the trust, like you said, is there for me to do what's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows trust and leadership for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, I guess pillar 5, managers need a checklist. We've talked about this in previous podcasts. Managers need a checklist. This one sounds simple, but incredibly practical. You want to explain it?
Yeah. So managers need systems and checklists, just like every employee that they manage. The checklist allows them to reinforce the vision of the organization, helps with communications, helps with development, keeps up with KPI, and also it keeps learning and recognition in the forefront. So I liked how the book explained that structure creates consistency, and without systems, leaders become reactive, and important things just get overlooked.
Yeah.
So, I liken it to my need for a list when I go to the grocery store. If I don't have one, I buy way more than I go to get. I forget 10% of what I actually did go to get. And then who knows how many trips back and forth between aisle 1 and aisle 10 will I make, having to go back and forth as I think of things that should have been on my list. So
yeah, that's a great comparison. I think so many times we think, we have our plan in our head of what we need to do, and then as the day goes through, or at the end of the day, I forgot this, I should have done this, and oh my gosh, I didn't finish this. And so I work on a checklist, every single day, and I think it's imperative for everyone, just not a leader, but everyone there should have a checklist.
Yeah, I
exactly.
have my own checklist too, and without that checklist, you're going to forget something important every time. You think you won't, but you will. We're human, and so without that checklist, we're going to forget. We're always going to forget.
And besides that, you may have the greatest intentions, but I know for me, I'll get ready to concentrate on something, and just as I get started, my phone rings, or an email pops up that has to be dealt with right away, and you're immediately sidetracked, and then you forget where you are. So,
Mhm.
That's right.
and in fast-paced businesses like hospitality, checklists help protect the standards, the communication, and the accountability.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. Like I said, I've had one, and I've got a great GM checklist. I've said this before on the other podcasts. If anybody wants it, just let me know and I'll send it to you. It's geared a little heavily towards Hilton, but it can still be used for any brand. But Nancy, what was your biggest takeaway from the book? What really resonated with you the most?
Yeah, I think the thing that resonated the most with me was that leadership is learned. Marty tells George from the very beginning, nobody's a born leader. It's a skill that is practiced and developed and refined over time, and that's encouraging because many people assume that leadership is something that just comes naturally,
Right.
and that they either think they have it or they don't have it. But this book reminds us that skills can be developed intentionally.
Yeah, and that is so encouraging because I know so many times people probably think, oh, I'll never be a leader or I don't have, the qualifications. But you learn all of that through these steps,
Right.
and I think that's so critical.
And that feeling never ever really goes away. I think we always kind of question ourselves. Am I doing a good job? Is this really the right thing for me? That's just being human. It's just
Yeah.
being humans, doubting ourselves. There's not a person I know on this podcast and probably listening as well that hasn't felt that way. God, what am I doing? Am I doing a good enough job? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? And those doubts creep in. So it's important. It's important to really focus on the mindset, man, for sure.
Yeah.
And this book really does kind of focus on that for us.
Yeah, one of the most powerful truths in the book is where it says, how people think affects how they feel. How people feel determines how they act. And how a team acts defines what a business becomes.
Yeah.
So that statement really captures the heart of the book, because leadership influences mindset, mindset influences culture, and then culture is ultimately what shapes the entire business.
That's true.
Hey, and I think that's leadership in one great sentence there, Nancy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah. What I liked about the book, I always love a good underdog story, but what I liked about the book was how George reclaimed his nickname Dozier. You want to tell us about that?
Oh, yeah.
Nancy?
Yeah, exactly.
I love
So-
this. This is
Yeah.
taking lemons and making lemonade.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, so he excuse me. So he takes his negative nickname his father had given him, Dozer, and he made it an acronym and had a plaque made and placed in his office. And this is after he had gone through all of his transformation and become the leader that he was, that the business was turning around, and things were looking up. So to remind himself that he had gone from that negative name to this positive acronym, he put it front and center. D for daring, to be bold and dream big. O for opportunity, because we are all builders of people. Z for zeal, because enthusiasm is contagious. E for empowerment, everyone can make a positive impact on the world. And R, resilience. We view problems as opportunities because we are limitless. And I thought about Tina on that last one, because she'll call me. All right, she'll call me and instead of telling me we've got a problem with something, she'll tell me, "Hey, we have an opportunity." So it's all in the way you look at things. So taking those opportunities and being able to find a solution to it. So
Hey, and go ahead, Nancy.
I thought that was such a meaningful ending, because it just showed the 180 degrees that George went from from thinking he was a loser to thinking and knowing that he could do it.
Yeah, I can get things done.
Well, I always say opportunity because it's an opportunity to turn a problem into a wow or aha moment.
Exactly.
And so, it's all about your perspective and how to turn that around. But I love this so much. I wanna be a dozer myself. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nancy, it is this time of our podcast that we ask a question.
Okay.
And the question is, what is something that a person or a mentor or someone has shared with you that you carry, that stuck with you through your career that you could share?
Sure. Well, I had a particular English teacher in high school that was probably one of the most positive people and found the good in people, anybody that came through her classroom. You're a tall, skinny teenage girl coming through her class. You don't have a lot of confidence in yourself, and she took the time to develop each one of us and to instill in us our potential and the positivity she saw in us and the everything that she could see us doing in our future. And she instilled that into us and made us believe it, too. And so it was a huge moment for me to be in her class and to have all of that poured into me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I remember I had some teachers like that too in high school and in college. Well, Nancy, thank you for leading this discussion today. I mean, this book gives us practical leadership lessons in ways that's easy to understand and to apply in various situations.
Yeah, I think, whether or not you're in hospitality, construction, retail, any other business, this book, was great to help you lead and manage. And hopefully, if you have not picked up the book, I urge everyone to do so. But great job, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. And the great thing about this book is it doesn't stop just with the parable. The second half of the book is actually a blueprint to build those 5 pillars of leadership and actionable ways that you can walk through developing each one of those.
Well, I will say that our next month podcast host is going to be one of our general managers, Lucas from the Hilton Garden Inn in Texarkana. So Ronnie will be posting his book, and look for those ads out on. Where can they find those at, Ronnie?
Well, we post them on. I couldn't think of the name. I was going to say TikTok.
TikTok. YouTube.
TikTok, YouTube, and just kind of all over, man. Just be looking for us.
Yeah,
Well,
Spotify.
chapters and check-ins for sure.
Yep. Chapters and check-ins.
Yeah. Well, thank all of you for joining us on Chapters and Check-ins. We enjoyed the discussion, and make sure that you follow and subscribe to all those places I just said, and share the podcast with everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you again,
Yeah.
Nancy, Ronnie. Thank you for hosting us every month. And
Yep.
until next time, keep turning the pages.
And checking in on yourself.
Thanks, everyone.